I have been where you might be right now. I have been in a position where I was overweight. I was suffering from insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, and some of the complications that come along with that, as well as being told that I was going to have to take metformin and eventually maybe even insulin. Hi, and welcome to Nature's Path to Wellness. My name is Wendy, and today I'm going to be sharing with you what I ate and how I was able to reverse type 2 diabetes and some of the complications that came along with it. So, if you are in a position where you are overweight and maybe you've been told that you have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes and you don't want to use medication, this video is going to be super important for you because there is actually hope. Most doctors will tell people that the type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance and all of that is going to be chronic and progressive, and that the only way that you'll be able to control it is with medication. And what happens is when you're put on metformin for type 2 diabetes, oftentimes the doctor will just keep matching the metformin dose with what your blood sugars are at. So, your blood sugars, if you're not changing your diet or if you're not including some exercise, your blood sugars will eventually keep staying at a higher rate. And so they'll prescribe metformin based on what your blood sugar levels are at that time. And if you keep eating the same way, and if you're not doing any type of exercise, they're going to need to increase the amount of metformin in order to try and maintain a pretty good blood sugar level. And so after time, there's only so much they can do with the metformin. The metformin isn't working any longer. And so then you'll eventually have to be moved on to insulin. And once you're on insulin, it doesn't mean that you're on it for life, but pretty much if you're progressing through metformin and insulin, you either haven't been told that there is a way to reverse type 2 diabetes and definitely a way to manage your blood sugars, or you might be one of those people that really doesn't care. And perhaps if that's the case for you, this information might not be valuable. But if you're in the category of somebody who wants to try and figure out how they can perhaps manage their blood sugar levels, maybe even reverse type 2 diabetes, and definitely help to get rid of some of the symptoms that you might be experiencing along with type 2 diabetes. Some of these symptoms might be diabetic neuropathy. That's something that I definitely dealt with when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And what it was is that my fingers and toes were tingling and burning lots of the time. I used to notice this symptom, especially in the summer months. I would be sitting in traffic when I was commuting, and I could feel like that burning sort of feeling and sensation in my feet. And I was thinking, well, it's probably just because it's hot, when in fact, it went on to be more tingling and tingling in my fingers. And I found out that that was diabetic peripheral neuropathy. And so once I was able to get my blood sugars under control, that was something that I was able to manage. I used to have some issues with my eyesight and even issues with heart palpitations and all kinds of things like that. And these are symptoms that are often tied to having insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. And once you're able to get your blood sugars under control, you are definitely able to get those symptoms under control and perhaps even reversed. I don't deal with heart palpitations any longer. I don't deal with the eye problems that I used to deal with. And I no longer deal with any of the diabetic peripheral neuropathy. So, what was told to me again that everything was chronic and progressive, and I decided to look into things at that time. I decided that there had to be a better way than to be sentenced to a life of metformin and perhaps even insulin. Now, if I back up a few years before I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I actually had gestational diabetes. And so, if you're not familiar with what that is, while I was pregnant, I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And so, that is something that you'll have when you're pregnant sometimes, and it will go away after your pregnancy, but you may go on to develop type 2 diabetes as I had. So, with gestational diabetes, again, I wasn't really told much about diet and being able to manage my blood sugars. And instead, I was moved quite quickly onto insulin. And so, from the period of about 6 months to 9 months when I had my daughter, I was giving myself regular daily shots of insulin. And it is not something that I ever want to have to do again. And so, later on, when I discovered that I had type 2 diabetes, I did everything in my power to figure out what could I do to try and manage this? Is it manageable without medication? So with nutrition, proper nutrition and exercise, I was able to reduce my blood sugar levels and to eventually reverse type 2 diabetes. And so you'll be wanting to know how I did that. Well, there was a lot of things that I tried. I'm going to be honest. It wasn't a quick, I found this instant diet and this is what worked. Instead, at the time, I went on to the keto diet. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the keto diet. And it is, I'm not saying it's a bad diet or a good diet. Everybody's going to have to find what works for them. And that is my belief. People will get into a mindset that they're going to be vegan or something for a period of time. And then they go into trying to be a vegan. And then, after a while, if they're not doing it for the right purposes, then it becomes very hard to follow that type of diet or lifestyle. And so when I started doing the keto diet, my sole reason was to get my blood sugars under control. And that was what I really needed to do. I was experiencing all kinds of things, like I explained the diabetic neuropathy, and I was experiencing mood swings and all of, anger and frustration just at the simplest of things. And so, what I noticed immediately when I started trying to do the keto diet is that my blood sugars did come under control quite quickly. And I was able to quickly gain relief from the diabetic neuropathy. And I went on to not having issues with my eyesight and whatever. And these heart palpitations mostly subsided. But, most important at that time was that my weight started to drop and my blood sugar numbers came under control. And so this video isn't all about going into the keto diet because eventually I found that the keto diet isn't something that I wanted to be doing for the rest of my life. What I found with the keto diet, and you'll hear that there's the sort of the clean keto diet, and then what they call, I guess, the nickname is the dirty keto diet. And so I think that I was leaning towards maybe doing the dirty keto diet for quite a long period of time. I was having all kinds of bacon and whatnot, and all these things that you think, oh, I can't believe I can have bacon and cheese and all kinds of dairy and creams on the keto diet. And you certainly can, and you will achieve the same results. But when I really took a look at what I was consuming and what that might look like in the long term, I quickly realized that this didn't seem like an overly healthful way of eating. I'm certain that I probably could have done it for lifelong, but I'm not entirely sure what all of the animal products and the dairy and all of these type of things would have done in the long term to my body. Because when we change our way of eating, we want to change it for the better. So, yes, we want to achieve the goal of reversing type 2 diabetes and getting our blood sugars under control and losing weight. And those are great things in the interim, but if we're going to trade that off down the road for other health issues that might come along from having all of these dairy products and all of these animal products, it just seemed that that maybe was not a permanent solution for me. So I began to look into different ways of eating. And what I have found is that over the past few years, while being able to maintain good, healthy blood sugar levels, it hasn't been such a rigid thing. I think people want to sort of lock themselves into something and saying, well, I'm part of the keto community and I'm carnivore and I'm vegan. And I think that that isn't really sustainable for your entire life. I think what is important is to find a good, healthy way of eating that you can do every day, and that sometimes you may choose to have something out of one of those categories. Let's put it like that. So I typically stick to a whole foods, plant based type of diet. And So it's not a vegetarian diet, and it's not a vegan diet, and it's definitely not a carnivore diet, and it's not keto. It's somewhere, I guess you could say, a little bit along the midline. And so I'm consuming lots of plants and vegetables, seeds and nuts and fruits. And I even allow some root vegetables and definitely whole grains. And I think it is one of the healthiest diets for not only getting your blood sugars under control and maintaining and losing weight, but also for, longevity. It's a diet that, and I actually hesitate to use the word diet in this case, but it is definitely a way of eating that I can do for my entire life. And I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. And so by having a whole foods plant based diet, you know, um, there are occasions where I might have meat. I'm not saying again that I'm vegan or vegetarian strictly. When it comes to typically, we don't have meat with our meals, but it doesn't mean we're so restrictive that we can't say, oh, I might like to have a free range chicken breast for dinner tonight with some salad. Or it's Christmas time and I'd like to go and enjoy turkey with my family, or it's Thanksgiving, or that kind of thing. So it's not so restrictive that you feel like you are defeated or you've done something wrong if you didn't stick to the plan. So like keto, you have to of course avoid all carbs and all sugars, and you're going to have lots of meats and whatnot, and there's just it feels very restrictive. And again, with a carnivore diet, if people say that they're on the carnivore diet, well, they're really not having much else than meat. And so they've locked themselves into a position where there isn't a lot of variety. And so the key factors that I want to talk about when I changed my diet and my way of eating so that I could reverse type 2 diabetes and get my blood sugars under control and lose the weight that I wanted to was sticking to essentially cutting out all processed foods. So you want to be able to cut out all the crackers and chips and prepackaged foods, basically. That's something that you want to do away with. You want to focus on plants and vegetables and fruits, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. And so, when you look at something like the keto diet, you're not going to have any rice or pasta. You've got to stay away from those completely. I happen to like rice and pasta, and I happen to want to be able to enjoy those in my life sometimes. If I'm not being able to have those, I'm feeling very restricted, and therefore it's not something I'm likely to stick to. So if I'm going to have rice, I look for a nice sort of organic rice that's brown, like it's not a white rice that's been highly processed. And same with pasta. I look for a whole grain pasta. Now, does that mean I'm having a whole entire plate of pasta? No, of course not. But you can have a small amount of pasta with lots of vegetables and maybe a side salad. And same with rice. So, rice is one of those things that I enjoy quite often mixed into things. I enjoy having a salad, and one of my absolute favorite salads is a Greek type salad. I will use some Greek seasoning, olive oil. So I get a cold pressed, organic, good quality olive oil. And I will mix that with the Greek seasoning. And I use, and some people use different types of vinegar, but I use apple cider vinegar with that. I mix that all up and make a sauce with some tomatoes. And I love olives. So I've got Kalamata olives in there, and cucumbers and red onions. And quite often, I'll toss in a quarter cup or half a cup of brown rice that maybe I've made before for a meal, or a couple days before, and I've kept in the fridge. And so that salad has become a full meal in itself. And it's one of those things that I just absolutely love. And typically, as I've talked about in a recent video, I don't have much dairy, if any at all. I don't drink any milk, and I don't use any cream in my coffee that's dairy based. But I will get a little bit of organic if possible, but a little bit of feta cheese, and I will add a tiny bit of that to my salad just to give it a little extra flavor. So again, eating and having a good quality life and enjoying what you eat and being able to stick to something is having things that you enjoy and not being so rigid and saying, I won't have this or I'll never have that. And that's what has been highly successful for me. So again, we'll have occasional, very rare, but some dairy. I do like a grass-fed butter or something on vegetables that have been steamed once in a while. Um, Going on a whole food, plant-based type of eating is having a lot of fiber in your diet. And fiber is your absolute friend when it comes to having type 2 diabetes and to regulating your blood sugar. So, lots of foods that include fiber. And having a whole food, plant based way of eating, and again, I'm not using the word diet, but having a way of eating like that has shown in so many studies to be able to reverse diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cognitive function. It's improved cognitive function, not reversed it, and help to reverse and prevent cancers. So it seems to be one of the best ways of eating that I have come across in the last few years. And so, if you're looking for a way to help to manage your type 2 diabetes, try and get your blood sugar numbers under control, and lose weight, and all of those types of things, what I would suggest is to immediately stop having any types of fast food. So, if you're visiting McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King and all these places, that is the number one thing that you'll want to cut out. And people will say, well, there's lots of salads and things at those places, but the dressings and all of the other hidden things in those foods is something that I would just rather avoid. So, and the next thing that I would say is to cut out all packaged processed foods. So, your macaroni and cheeses and your chips and your crackers and all of those types of things, boxed cereals, you name it. If you're finding it on the shelf in the grocery store, and it's quick to prepare and it has tons of ingredients in it that most of them you can't name, that is definitely something that you want to stop consuming and purchasing. Refined grains, so basically like your flour, your white bread, and having white rice and all of these things, they've been processed and refined, and basically they hardly resemble food and they do not offer any real nutrition for your body. So, processed meats, I would consider cutting those out right away. They often have lots of sodium, they even have hidden sugars and different types of things added to them that you'll just want to avoid. So, adopting a new way of eating can be a little bit challenging in the beginning, but what I would encourage you is to look at what the reasons are that you're doing this. If you're wanting to reverse type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance and you want to get your weight under control, those are your primary goals. This is for long term health. So, making these eating decisions and nutrition decisions can be so very important. And again, some days you're going to fall off the wagon, I guess you could say. Some days you're going to crave something that's sweet or whatever. And you don't have to beat yourself up and feel like you've completely failed and forget it altogether. You just pick up and carry on where you left off. Just because I'm a nutritionist, just because I have reversed type 2 diabetes, doesn't mean that I eat perfect every single day of the year. There are often times where we'll go into town, my daughter and I, and it's like, oh, maybe we'll just have an ice cream tonight, or other things. You've got to allow yourself some flexibility so that you can enjoy life and just focus on the big goal. Sometimes there will be little hurdles that you'll come across, and some days, the weight isn't coming off and whatnot. But I encourage you that when you look at the big picture and you understand the reasons and for, making a change in your diet, those are the things that are going to keep you going. And again, don't beat yourself up if you have a bad day. So, if you have any questions, I encourage you to post them in the comment section below. I'd be happy to answer them. And if you're struggling with what type of foods to eat, reach out. My email address is in the description of this video below, and I'd be happy to hear from you and be able to answer any questions that you might have. I hope this video has been helpful for you. I encourage you that if you're looking to make a change in your diet and find a new way of eating for the rest of your life, don't put yourself into a rigid category. You'll have so many people telling you, we got to do keto and you got to do the carnivore diet. Find something that's going to work for you. Find something that's going to offer you the flexibility that you need so that you can stay on track and to achieve your goals. I will be here supporting you the whole way. If you like this video, I ask that you give it a thumbs up. And if you know somebody that can benefit from this information, please be sure to share this video with them. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, do so for more health and nutrition information. I do look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, stay healthy.